Get off my bench. Old man. I'm just sitting here. Son. Don't call me son. Huh. Colton grabbed Elias's collar and yanked him forward. Who the hell are you to think you're my father, one-eyed old rat? Let go of my shirt. Please. Colton slapped the words off his face. He grabbed Elias by the collar. You're driving me crazy. You stinking old man. Let me help you with the other eye so it's even. Don't say that. Colton released Elias. Turned to his friends. Teach him a lesson. This stinking old man dares to talk back to me. They all cornered him. Elias stood up slowly. Every joint protesting. He looked at Colton. You sure about that? Son Colton had no idea who the man he had just attacked really was. This is the story of Elias Dunmore, and the day they picked the wrong old man. Elias Dunmore had lived on Birchwood Lane for 37 years. Same house. Same porch. Same cracked front steps he never got around to fixing. The neighborhood had changed around him, new fences. New faces. New money creeping in from the west side. But Elias stayed. He stayed because this was where Rosalind had planted her roses. And even though Rosalind had been gone 7 years, the roses still bloomed every May. He was 71. Moved slow in the mornings. His left eye saw the world just fine. His right eye saw nothing at all, hadn't since 1988. A detached retina from a punch that should never have been thrown. In a fight that should never have happened. But that was a long time ago. Most people on Birchwood Lane knew Elias as the quiet old man who swept the sidewalk at 6 a.m. and carried grocery bags for Mrs. Alvarez on Wednesdays. They didn't know about the 19 professional fights. They didn't know about the middleweight belt in a shoebox under his bed, wrapped in a scrap of Rosalind's velvet shawl. They didn't know that the name the Shadow Dunmore once made grown men cross to the other side of the gym. Elias didn't talk about it. When people asked about his eye, he told them cataracts. Easier that way. Every morning at 6:30. He walked 6 blocks to Fairview Park. He carried a duffel bag with 2 pairs of boxing gloves, a jump rope, and hand wraps so old the elastic had given up completely. He set up near the basketball courts under the big maple tree, where the roots had cracked the concrete into something that almost looked like a ring. The kids started showing up 3 years ago. First Marcus, 13, and angry at everything. Then Nia, 11, and faster than any of them. Then Julian. Julian was the one who kept Elias coming back. 9 years old. Small for his age. A stutter that turned simple words into obstacles. A father in prison since Julian was 5. His grandmother brought him to the park every morning before her shift at the laundromat. She couldn't afford a babysitter. She couldn't afford much of anything. The first day, Julian watched from behind the water fountain. Second day, he stood closer. Third day, Elias held out a pair of gloves. You want to try? Julian shook his head. That's okay. Elias said. They'll be here tomorrow. It took 2 weeks. One morning, Julian walked up, put his hands out, and let Elias wrap them. His fingers were shaking. Elias pretended not to notice. First thing, Elias said, plant your feet like this. He showed Julian the stance, left foot forward, right foot back. Weight balanced. The same stance his trainer, Otis Graham, had drilled into him 50 years earlier in a basement gym in Cleveland. Now hands up. Protect what matters. Julian raised his fists. They barely reached his own chin. Good, Elias said. Real good. Julian smiled. First time his grandmother had seen that smile in months. Every morning after that, Julian was there 6 days a week. He learned the jab first, then the cross, then how to slip a punch by moving his head 2 inches to the left. No more. No less. Elias taught the way Otis had taught him, patient. Quiet. One thing at a time. He never raised his voice. Never pushed too hard. When Julian got frustrated and threw the gloves down, Elias picked them up, set them on the bench, and said, They'll be here tomorrow. Julian always came back. What Elias was really teaching wasn't boxing. It was the thing underneath the belief that your body could do what your mind was afraid of. That you could stand in front of something terrifying and not run. That the stutter, the small frame, the missing father, none of it decided who you were. The gloves just made it easier to believe. It was a Thursday in early October when Colton Vance showed up at Fairview Park for the first time. He rolled in with 5 friends, all of them in their early 20s. 2 had gym bags slung over their shoulders like props. 1 carried a portable speaker blasting music loud enough to rattle the chain-link fence around the basketball courts. Colton was 23, son of Councilman Harold Vance, a name that opened doors, closed complaints, and made police reports disappear. Colton had never worked a job. Never needed to. He spent most of his time making content for an app called Flick. Pranks. Mostly. The kind that targeted people who couldn't fight back food delivery drivers. Elderly women waiting at laundromats. He called it comedy. His 340,000 followers agreed. That morning, Elias was teaching Julian how to keep his guard up after throwing a jab. Bring it back fast, he said. The punch that hurts you is the one you don't see. Julian nodded. Threw the jab. Pulled it back. Getting better every week. Colton spotted them from across the park. An old man in dark glasses teaching a skinny kid to box with taped-up gloves on cracked concrete. Yo, get this, Colton said to the friend with the phone. This is gold. They walked over. Colton kicked the duffel bag. Gloves and hand wraps spilled across the ground. What is this? A homeless gym, Colton said. His friends laughed. The phone was already recording. Elias didn't look up. He put his hand on Julian's shoulder. Pick up your gloves. Son. Hey. I'm talking to you. Colton stepped between them. You got a permit for this. You can't just set up camp in a public park. Elias looked at Colton with his one good eye. Calm. Measured. The way a man looks at something he's seen 100 times before. We're just training, Elias said quietly. Training. Colton grinned at the camera. Training for what, the retirement home Olympics? More laughter. Julian's hands were shaking. Not from the cold. Elias picked up the duffel bag. Packed the gloves. Took Julian's hand. Come on, he said. We'll come back tomorrow. They walked away. Colton's laughter followed them all the way to the sidewalk. Elias came back the next morning. So did Colton. This time Colton brought a can of iced coffee. Not to drink. He waited until Elias was showing Julian how to pivot on the back foot. Then walked up behind him and poured the entire can over Elias's head. The coffee ran down Elias's face. Dripped off his chin. Soaked through his collar. His dark glasses fogged up. He stood still. Colton's friends screamed with laughter. 2 phones out. One of them yelled. Rinsed him off. You're still here, Colton said. I thought I told you to crawl home. Elias wiped his face with his sleeve. Took off his glasses. Cleaned them on his shirt. Put them back on. Julian, he said quietly. Show me that pivot again. Julian was frozen. Eyes wide. Lips pressed together so the stutter wouldn't escape. It's okay, Elias said. Show me. Julian pivoted. His feet were perfect. His hands were trembling. Colton watched them for another 10 minutes. Then got bored and left. But he posted the video that night. Caption: Old man gets a wash. 21,000 likes by morning. 460 comments. Most of them laughing. He came back Sunday. This time, he went straight for the duffel bag. Pulled out Elias's gloves, the old ones. Cracked leather. Laces frayed thin. The ones Elias had owned since 1982. The ones Rosalind had kept polished on the mantel like a trophy even after he stopped fighting. Colton held them up to the camera. Look at these museum pieces. He tossed one to his friend. They played catch with them across the court while Elias watched. Give those back, Elias said. His voice was even, but his jaw was tight. or what Colton dangled the glove over a dumpster. You want it, come get it. Old man. Elias didn't move. Colton dropped the glove in the dumpster. Then the other one. There. Colton said. Now you match the rest of the garbage out here. Elias said nothing. He turned to Julian. Let's call it a day. That night, Elias fished the gloves out of the dumpster at 11 p.m. under a streetlight. He sat on his porch and cleaned them with a damp cloth for an hour, rubbing the leather the way Rosalind used to. His hands were steady. His breathing was not. The following Wednesday, Colton brought spray paint. Elias arrived at 6:30 as usual. Julian was already waiting by their bench, under the maple tree. But something was different. Julian was standing next to it, not sitting. Elias walked closer. Saw it. Someone had sprayed the word useless across the seat in orange paint. And below it, smaller, leave. Julian looked up at Elias. Mr. Elias. Who did this? The stutter was back. 3 months of progress gone in 2 words. Elias didn't answer. He set down his bag. Sat on the bench anyway, right on top of the paint. Come on, he said. Let's work on your cross today. But Colton wasn't done. From Colton's perspective, this was the best content he'd ever made. The coffee video had outperformed everything on his page. His followers wanted more. Comments said things like, do it again and make the old man cry. Colton's friends suggested they find someone else. But Colton refused. He liked Elias specifically because Elias never reacted. The non-reaction was the content. The silence was the joke. Colton also knew something the rest of the park didn't. His father was Councilman Harold Vance. 3 terms on the city council. Chair of the Community Standards Committee. Every officer in the precinct knew the name. 2 complaints had already been filed about Colton's behavior in the park. Both had been quietly moved to the bottom of a stack. One had disappeared entirely. Colton could do whatever he wanted. And he knew it. The neighbors knew it too. Mrs. Alvarez watched from her window every morning. She saw the coffee. She saw the gloves in the dumpster. She saw the spray paint. She picked up the phone twice to call the precinct. Both times, she put it down. What's the point? She told her daughter. His daddy runs the whole thing. Marcus's mother pulled him from the group after the coffee video went viral. I can't have my son around that, she said. She didn't mean Elias. She meant the danger that Elias attracted by refusing to leave. Nia's father did the same. Find somewhere else to play, he told her. Nia cried for 2 days. Within a week, only Julian was left. His grandmother didn't have the option of finding somewhere else. She worked 6 a.m. to 4 p.m. The park was it. Every morning. Elias showed up. Every morning. Julian showed up. Every morning. Colton showed up. And every night. Elias sat in his garage in the dark. The heavy bag hung from the ceiling beam. The same one he'd installed in 1990, when he still thought he might come back to the ring. He hadn't touched it in decades. But now his hands found it in the dark. Left jab. Right cross. Left hook. The bag swung. And he caught it. The rhythm came back like breathing. His right eye saw nothing. His hands remembered everything. He hit the bag for an hour. Then 2. Then 3. He never told anyone. Not Julian. Not Mrs. Alvarez. Not the memory of Rosalind, whose roses he watered every morning before walking to the park. Something in Elias Dunmore was waking up, and it scared him more than Colton ever could. Hold on. The whole block saw it. Nobody moved. Not because they didn't care. They just did the math. And that math left a 71-year-old man and a 9-year-old kid standing alone every morning. I don't know if I would have been any different. It was a Tuesday night when Elias stopped pretending. He stood in the garage wrapping his hands the old way. 2 loops around the wrist. 3 across the knuckles. Pulled tight between each finger. Otis Graham's method. 50 years. And his hands still knew the pattern in the dark. He hit the bag different that night. Not the slow, careful rhythm of a man remembering. This was sharp. Precise combinations he hadn't thrown since the middleweight finals in Reno. Jab. Jab. Cross. Hook to the body. Uppercut. The bag jumped on its chain. The ceiling beam groaned. His right eye was dead, but his left tracked the bag like a scope. His feet moved the way feet move when they've done 10,000 rounds of shadow boxing. Muscle doesn't forget. Bone doesn't forget. The past doesn't forget. He stopped after midnight. Sat on the concrete floor. Hands throbbing. Breathing hard. He looked at the shoebox in the corner. Rosalind's velvet shawl still wrapped around the belt inside. "I promised you," he whispered. "I know I promised you." The next morning in the park, Julian asked the question. "Mr. Elias, why don't you ever fight back?" Elias looked at the boy. 9 years old. Split lip from last week, when Colton shoved him into the drinking fountain. Still showing up every morning. "Because I haven't decided yet," Elias said. But he had. It happened on a Saturday. November 14th. The kind of morning where the air smells like wet leaves and the sky can't decide between grey and blue. Elias and Julian were working on combinations. Julian was getting good. Real good. His jab had snapped now. His cross came straight. Not looping. When he moved, his feet stayed under him the way Elias had taught. Left foot forward. Right foot back. Protect what matters. That's it. Elias said, "Now again." Faster. Julian threw the combo. Jab. Cross. Pull back. Clean. Again. Jab. Cross. Pull back. Even cleaner. Elias almost smiled. 3 months of mornings and the kid was starting to look like a fighter. Not because he was big or strong. Because he was precise. Because he listened. Because every morning he showed up and put his hands out and said nothing and let Elias wrap them. That was the morning Colton Vance decided to make his masterpiece. He showed up at 8:15 with 6 friends instead of 5. One had a ring light clipped to his phone. A professional setup. Colton had announced on Flick the night before, "Tomorrow we finish this." Live from Fairview Park. Don't miss it. 15,000 people were watching the stream when they walked through the gate. Colton crossed the basketball court and headed straight for the maple tree. Elias saw him coming. He put his hand on Julian's shoulder. "Stay behind me," he said. Well, Colton said. Loud enough for the stream. The blind museum is still open. He looked directly into the camera. "You guys watching, watch this." He reached down and snatched the gloves off Julian's hands. Julian stumbled backward. "Give those back," Elias said. "Shut up." Colton tossed the gloves to his friend. Then he turned to Julian. "You know what your problem is. Kid, you got nobody. Your daddy's in jail. Your mama's gone. And your boxing coach can't even see straight." He bent down to Julian's level. "You're nothing. Just like him." Julian's lip was trembling. He didn't say a word. The stutter had swallowed everything. "Leave the boy alone," Elias said. His voice was low. The kind of low that sounds like a warning if you know what to listen for. Colton didn't, or what Colton straightened up. Looked at the camera. Grinned. Then he shoved Julian. Not a small shove. Both hands. Full force. Into a 9-year-old's chest. Julian flew backward. Hit the edge of the concrete where the tree roots had cracked it. And went down hard. His head bounced off the ground. Blood appeared on his forehead. A thin line at first. Then it ran down past his eyebrow and into his eye. Julian didn't cry. He just lay there, looking up at Elias with one eye open and one eye full of blood like a mirror. The stream had 19,000 viewers now. Elias looked down at Julian. Looked at the blood. Looked at the boy's hands. Still curled into fists even on the ground. Still in guard position. Still protecting what matters. Something shifted behind Elias's eyes. Not anger. Something older than anger. Something that had been sleeping in a garage for decades and was now fully, completely awake. Elias took off his dark glasses, folded them, set them on the bench. He turned to Colton. "You sure about that?" Son, the same words from the first day at the bench. But the voice was different now. There was no trembling. No patience. No old man. Colton laughed. "What are you going to do?" "Grandpa bleed on me." He threw a punch, a lazy, wide right hand. The kind of punch someone throws when they've never been hit back. All arm. No foundation. No, guard. Elias slipped it 2 inches to the left. No more. No less. The movement was so fast that Colton's fist hit nothing but air. His momentum carried him forward. Off balance. His eyes went wide. That was the first time fear touched his face. Elias's left jab landed before Colton could reset. Straight down the center. Clean. The sound was sharp, not a thud. A crack. Colton's head snapped back. His nose shifted 1/2 inch to the right. Colton staggered. Put his hands up. Too late. Too high. Elias's right cross came underneath. Into the solar plexus. Every molecule of air left Colton's lungs in one sound. His mouth opened. Nothing came out. Then the uppercut. Elias planted his back foot. Rotated his hips the way Otis Graham had taught him in the basement in Cleveland. And drove his right fist upward from his waist. It connected under Colton's chin with the precision of a man who had thrown that exact punch 10,000 times in the ring. In the garage. In his sleep. Colton Vance left the ground. Both feet. Just for a second. Then he hit the concrete face first and didn't move. 3 punches. 5 seconds. Decades of silence. Broken in 5 seconds. The park was quiet. 19,000 people on the stream were quiet. Colton's friends were quiet. The one with the ring light hadn't moved. The phone was still recording. Elias stood over Colton. His hands were shaking now. Not from exhaustion, from the flood of something he had spent decades trying to bury. He looked at his fists. Opened them. Closed them. Opened them again. Then he turned around. Walked to Julian. And knelt down. He pressed his palm against the cut on the boy's forehead. Gentle. The same hands that had just put a 23-year-old on the ground were now holding a 9-year-old's face like it was made of glass. "You okay?" he asked. Julian nodded. His eyes were wide. But not afraid. Something else. "Mr. Elias," he whispered. "You can fight." Elias picked the boy up. Set him on the bench. Wrapped his forehead with the old hand wraps from the duffel bag. Then he sat beside him and put his arm around his shoulders. He didn't say anything. There was nothing to say. Across the park, Colton Vance was being helped to his feet by his friends. His nose was bleeding. His jaw hung slightly open on the left side. The ring light was still on. The stream had been recording the entire time, 26 minutes of footage. The clip of the 3 punches was extracted within the hour. By noon, it had 3.2 million views. By the next morning, 31 million. The comments came in waves. Who is this old man? That footwork that's not a street fighter. Somebody ID this guy. The hashtag started small number park takedown. But by evening it had been replaced by something else. Something that would change everything. Number, shadow returns. And somewhere in a living room across town, a 65-year-old retired sports journalist named Walter Kessler watched the clip for the 11th time. He paused it at the uppercut. Zoomed in on the footwork. The pivot. The hip rotation. He knew that technique. He had seen it before. Decades ago. In a ring. From a fighter they called the Shadow. Walter pulled up his archive, 36 years of notes. Photo. Fight cards. Press clippings. All stored in filing cabinets in his basement. He found the folder in 20 minutes. Elias the Shadow Dunmore. 19 fights. 19 wins. 12 knockouts. Middleweight champion at 26. Then nothing. The record just stopped. No retirement announcement. No farewell fight. One day he was the most dangerous middleweight in the division. The next day he was gone. Walter remembered the rumors. An underground fight. An unlicensed bout. Serious injury. But no one had ever confirmed it. The boxing commission had no record. The promoter was never identified. Elias Dunmore simply vanished. And the sport moved on. Walter looked at the viral clip again. Paused it. At the moment, Elias took off his dark glasses. Zoomed in. The right eye. Clouded. Unfocused. Dead. A detached retina. The kind of injury that comes from a specific type of impact. The kind that ends careers. He picked up the phone and called a source at the State Boxing Commission. I need everything you have on unlicensed bouts in 1988. Middleweight division. Anything involving an eye injury. The source called back the next morning. There's nothing in the official record. But I found something in the complaint files. A sealed report. An anonymous complaint was filed in April 1988 about an underground fight organized at a warehouse on Dresden Street. The complaint names a promoter, a guy named Harold Vance. Walter Kessler sat down slowly. He read the name again. Then he looked at the press conference footage from earlier that week. Councilman Harold Vance. American flag pin. We are a city of laws. The same man. Walter drove to Birchwood Lane that afternoon. He knocked on Elias's door. Elias opened it. Dark glasses on. Cardboard taped over a broken window behind him. Mr. Dunmore. My name is Walter Kessler. I'm a sport journalist. I covered your title fight in Reno in 1988. Elias didn't move. Didn't speak. Just stood in the doorway like a man deciding whether to close the door or step through it. I know who you are. Walter said, I know what happened to your eye. And I think I know who did it. Elias looked at him for a long time. Then he stepped aside and let him in. They sat in the living room for 2 hours. Elias told him everything. The warehouse on Dresden Street. The heavyweight, who outweighed him by 35 pounds. The illegal elbow. Waking up in the hospital with one eye gone. The promoter who vanished overnight. The career that ended with no press conference. No farewell. No explanation, just silence. I didn't know his name back then. Elias said. He was just a voice behind a curtain. I never saw his face. His name was Harold Vance. Walter said. Elias was quiet. He looked at the shoebox on the shelf. Rosalind's velvet shawl still wrapped around the belt. His hands were flat on his knees. Still. And his son. Elias said slowly. His son is the one in the park. Yes. Elias closed his eyes. One good. One dead. Both shut now. Walter spent the next 48 hours building the story. He pulled county records, business filings, property deeds. In 1988. Harold Vance was 31 years old and running an unlicensed boxing promotion out of a warehouse he leased under a shell company. He organized underground bouts. No referees. No doctors. No commission oversight. Fighters were paid in cash. No medical coverage. No liability. On April 9th, 1988, Elias the Shadow Dunmore fought in one of those bouts. His opponent landed an illegal elbow that detached Elias's retina. There was no ringside doctor. By the time Elias reached the hospital, the damage was permanent. Harold Vance shut down the operation the next week. Changed his business filings. Moved into real estate. Then local politics. Then city council. 3 terms. Chair of the Community Standards Committee. The man who kept the city safe had once run the operation that destroyed a champion's career and left him half blind. And now his son had cornered that same man in a park. Had poured coffee on his head. Had thrown his gloves in a dumpster. Had shoved a 9-year-old boy onto concrete. And when the champion finally fought back with 3 punches in 5 seconds, the councilman had used every ounce of his power to bury him again. Walter Kessler published the story on Friday morning. Front page of the Herald's website. The headline, "The Shadow of Fairview Park, How a City Councilman Destroyed a Boxing Champion." Twice, the article included everything. The sealed complaint, the warehouse address, the shell company, the medical records from 1988. Side-by-side photos, Elias at 26, holding the middleweight belt, and Elias at 71, sitting on a park bench with spray paint behind him. The uppercut from the viral clip, frame by frame, matched against footage from the 1988 title fight. Identical technique. Same fighter. Decades apart. Harold Vance read the article at 6 a.m. in his kitchen. His wife said his face went white. He called his attorney. The attorney didn't pick up. He called his chief of staff. The chief of staff had already resigned by email at 5:45 a.m. 12 minutes after the article went live, the article hit 38 million views by Saturday night. More than the original viral clip. Number shadow returns came back. But this time it carried a different weight. This time people understood. The old man in the park wasn't just a fighter. He was a man who had been robbed of everything by the same family that was now trying to rob him again. By Sunday evening, the day after the confrontation went viral, Elias Dunmore had been charged with aggravated assault. The arrest happened at 6 a.m. Monday. 2 officers knocked on Elias's door. He opened it in the same clothes he wore to the park canvas jacket. Dark glasses. The duffel bag of gloves sitting by the door. Ready for the morning session. "Mr. Dunmore, you're under arrest for the assault of Colton Vance." Elias didn't resist. He set the bag down on the porch, took off his glasses, and held out his wrists. Mrs. Alvarez was watching from her window. She saw them put handcuffs on a 71-year-old man at sunrise. She called her daughter and cried for 20 minutes. Harold Vance held a press conference that afternoon. Suit pressed, American flag pin on his lapel. He stood behind the podium at City Hall with Colton beside him. Jaw wired shut. Neck brace. Arm in a sling. The camera loved it. A father protecting his injured son. The image was perfect. "My son was violently attacked by an unhinged individual in a public park," Harold said. "Colton is 23 years old. He suffered a broken nose, a dislocated jaw, and a concussion. This was not self-defense. This was a brutal, unprovoked assault by someone who clearly has a history of violence." He paused, looked down at his notes, looked back up with practiced grief. "I'm asking the DA to pursue the maximum sentence. No one, regardless of age, has the right to put their hands on another person. We are a city of laws." No reporter asked about Julian. No reporter asked about the 20 minutes of harassment that preceded the 3 punches. Harold's media consultant had sent the press a carefully edited clip, 90 seconds long, starting the moment Elias took off his glasses. Everything before that had been cut. The narrative was set. Cable News ran the clip with a new headline: "Elderly man viciously attacks youth in park." They slowed down the uppercut. They zoomed in on Colton hitting the concrete. They showed Colton's hospital photo swollen face. Neck brace. Tubes. One anchor called Elias a ticking time bomb hiding in a public space. They did not show Julian. They did not mention the blood on a 9-year-old's forehead. They did not play the first 20 minutes of the stream, where Colton harassed, humiliated, and shoved a child. That part of the footage had been quietly filed as unverified by the Vance legal team. The comment sections turned. Not all of them, but enough. That old man could have killed him. There's no excuse for that level of violence. He needs to be in a facility. Why was he even around children? The people who had cheered number shadow returns on Saturday were now sharing concern pieces by Monday. A petition appeared online. "Remove dangerous individuals from Fairview Park." It had 640 signatures by Tuesday. Elias was released on bail Tuesday morning. His public defender, a young woman named Nadia Ferreira, who had 37 active cases and a desk covered in folders, told him the situation was serious. The DA is pushing for felony assault. Councilman Vance is pressuring the judge. They want to make an example of what Elias asked. Of you, she said. They're saying you're dangerous, that you use trained fighting skills against an unarmed person. That makes it aggravated. Elias sat in her office and said nothing for a long time. Then he asked, "What about the boy? What about what Colton did to Julian?" Nadia looked at her desk. The Vance family hasn't been charged with anything. Colton's statement says he was trying to mediate a dispute when you attacked him without warning. That's a lie, I know. But they have a councilman, a media team, and a DA who plays tennis with Harold Vance every Sunday. We have a viral video that half the country now thinks shows an old man beating up a kid. He's 23, on camera, with a neck brace. He looks 18. That's all that matters. A restraining order was filed Wednesday. Elias was prohibited from going within 750 feet of Fairview Park. The order was signed by Judge Corinne Ashby, the same judge who had attended Harold Vance's fundraiser dinner 3 months earlier. That evening, someone threw a brick through Elias's front window. No note. No face. Just a fist-sized hole in the glass and shards scattered across Rosalind's old rug. Elias swept them up in silence. He taped a piece of cardboard over the hole and sat on the couch in the dark. He couldn't go to the park. He couldn't see Julian. He couldn't do the only thing that had given his morning's meaning since Rosalind died. The duffel bag sat by the door like a promise he could no longer keep. Julian's grandmother called that night. Her voice was thin. "Mr. Dunmore, I don't know what to do. Julian won't eat. He won't talk. He just sits by the window and looks at the park. He wrapped his own hands this morning. Just sat there with his fists up, hitting the air. Tell him I'll be back." Elias said. When Elias didn't answer, he didn't know. The next morning, Elias woke at 6:30 out of habit, got dressed, picked up the bag, walked to the front door, stopped, set the bag down, sat on the porch. He did the same thing the next morning, and the next, and the next. On the fourth morning, he found Julian sitting on his front steps. The boy had walked 9 blocks alone before sunrise to find him. His hands were already wrapped. Badly. Lopsided. The tape bunching between his fingers, the way a 9-year-old wraps his own hands when his coach isn't there. "Mr. Elias," Julian said. "I don't want to stop." Elias looked at the boy, split lip still healing. Dark circles under his eyes. But his fists were up. Guard position. Protecting what matters. Elias knelt down, unwrapped the boy's hands, rewrapped them properly. 2 loops around the wrist, 3 across the knuckles, pulled tight between each finger. Otis Graham's method, the same way he'd been doing it for 50 years. "We're not stopping," he said. They trained on Elias's porch that morning. No maple tree. No cracked concrete ring. No duffel bag of gear. Just an old man and a boy and a pair of gloves that had survived everything the world had thrown at them. They took his park, threw a brick through his window, and a 9-year-old kid walked 9 blocks in the dark, just to say, "Don't kid. I'm not going to lie." That broke something in me. Who shows up for you like that? Walter Kessler had covered boxing for 36 years. Ringside at arenas across the country. Press row in Reno. Atlantic City. Vegas. He had watched hundreds of professional fights in person and written about most of them. He knew fighters the way a piano tuner knows pianos, not by looking at them, but by listening to the way they moved. He watched the Fairview Park clip for the 14th time on a Wednesday evening. His wife asked him to come to dinner. He didn't hear her. It was the uppercut that haunted him. Not the power. Though the power was real. It was the setup. The way the old man planted his back foot at exactly 45 degrees. The way his hips rotated before his arm moved. The way the fist traveled from the waist, not the shoulder. That wasn't a street fighter's uppercut. That was a trained technique. A specific technique. One he had seen exactly once before in his career. In a ring. From a fighter they called the Shadow, the investigation moved fast. Faster than anyone expected. The State Attorney General's office subpoenaed Harold Vance's financial records on Monday. By Wednesday, they had the shell company filings, the warehouse lease, and bank statements showing cash payments to unlicensed fighters between 1,986 and 1,988. 11 fighters. No medical coverage. No insurance. No records filed with the State Boxing Commission. 3 of those fighters had suffered career-ending injuries. Elias was one of them. The other 2 had never come forward. On Thursday, Harold Vance was formally charged with racketeering, operating an unlicensed sporting event, and obstruction of justice, the last one for the 2 police complaints about Colton that had been buried. The sealed complaint from 1,988 was unsealed. His name was on every page. Harold held no press conference this time. No American flag pin. No podium. His attorney released a 2-sentence statement. Councilman Vance denies all charges and looks forward to his day in court. By Friday, he had resigned from the city council. Not voluntarily, the council voted unanimously to remove him. The man who had chaired the Community Standards Committee for 3 terms was escorted out of City Hall by the same officers who had once buried complaints on his behalf. Colton Vance was charged separately. Assault on a minor for shoving Julian. Harassment. Criminal mischief for the spray paint and property damage. His Flick account was suspended. His 340,000 followers watched his last video, the live stream from the park, get taken down by the platform. The comments section, before it disappeared, was nothing but number shadow returns and justice for Elias. Colton's friends were charged as accessories. The one with the ring light deleted his account. It didn't matter. The footage was already everywhere. The boxing community found Elias before the courts did. It started with a phone call from the National Boxing Federation, then the Boxing Legends Hall of Fame, then fighters, active and retired, who had grown up hearing whispers about the Shadow, the middleweight, who vanished. The champion with no farewell fight. They had all watched the Fairview Park clip. They had all read Walter Kessler's article. And they all wanted the same thing: to acknowledge what had been stolen. The National Boxing Federation issued a formal statement recognizing Elias, the Shadow Dunmore's career record: 19 fights, 19 wins, 12 knockouts, and condemning the circumstances that had ended it. The statement called the underground bout a criminal act that robbed the sport of one of its finest competitors. 3 former middleweight champions recorded video messages. One of them, a man named Emmanuel Ross, who had held the belt 2 years after Elias lost his eye, said something that went viral on its own. I always wondered who the Shadow was. Now I know. And I wish I could have fought him. I think he would have beaten me. Walter Kessler published a follow-up piece the next week. This one was different. No investigation. No records. Just a profile. He spent a morning on Elias's porch, watching him teach Julian. Back on the porch, or the duffel bag between them. The old gloves on the railing. Do you feel vindicated? Walter asked. Elias thought about it. I feel tired, he said. But the good kind. The neighbors came back first. Mrs. Alvarez brought a casserole and an apology. She stood on Elias's porch with tears running down her face and said, I should have called. I should have done something. Elias took the casserole. You're here now, he said. That counts. Marcus's mother brought him back to the group. So did Nia's father. Within a week, Elias had 10 kids showing up every morning. Then 13. Then 16. Parents started staying to watch. Some of them brought chairs. One brought a folding table with water bottles and orange slices. Like it was a real gym. The city council, now missing one member, passed a resolution the following month. Fairview Park would receive funding for a permanent community boxing program. New equipment. A covered training area near the maple tree. Licensed coaches. Free for all kids under 16. They asked Elias what to name it. He didn't hesitate. The Elias Dunmore boxing program. He said, "After my wife. She's the reason I kept my hands down for so many years. And she's the reason I finally put them back up." Elias Dunmore walked back into Fairview Park on a Tuesday morning in December. 6:30 sharp. Duffel bag over his shoulder. Dark glasses on, new ones. Paid for by a boxing fan in Milwaukee who had mailed them with a handwritten note for the shadow. "Welcome back." Julian was already there, sitting on the bench under the maple tree. Hands wrapped. Fists up. Waiting. Elias set the bag down. Looked at the bench. The spray paint was gone. Someone had sanded it clean and repainted it. A small brass plaque had been screwed into the backrest. It read, "This bench belongs to Elias Dunmore and everyone he teaches." He didn't know who put it there. He never found out. Mr. Elias. Julian said. He was smiling. The stutter was still there. But the smile was bigger than the stutter now. "You ready? Show me your jab," Elias asked. Julian threw it. Snap. Straight. Pull back. Clean again. Snap. Cleaner again. The morning light came through the maple leaves and landed on the cracked concrete like a spotlight. The other kids arrived one by one. Marcus first. Then Nia. Then new faces kids Elias had never seen before. Some came with their parents. Some came alone. One boy walked 4 miles from the east side because he saw the video and wanted to learn how to stand like that. Elias taught them all the same way. One thing at a time. Plant your feet. Hands up. Protect what matters. The Elias Dunmore boxing program launched officially in January. The city provided heavy bags, speed bags, jump ropes, and a covered pavilion next to the maple tree. 2 licensed coaches volunteered, both former amateur champions who had followed the story. Elias wasn't technically a coach on paper. He didn't have the certification. But every morning he was there. And every morning the real coaches stepped back and let him work. Nobody questioned it. Nobody needed to. Walter Kessler visited one more time. He brought a photographer. The photo that ran with the final article became the most shared image in the Herald's history. Elias Dunmore, 71 years old, kneeling on cracked concrete, wrapping a 9-year-old boy's hands. One good eye looking down at the tape. One dead eye facing the camera. Behind them, 16 kids in a line. Fists up. Guard position. Learning to protect what matters. The headline was simple. The shadow found his way home. Harold Vance's trial was scheduled for April. Colton Vance pleaded no contest to the assault and harassment charges. He was sentenced to 150 hours of community service and a 2-year restraining order from Fairview Park. His Flick account never came back. His followers moved on. The internet forgot him the way the internet forgets everyone who isn't worth remembering. But nobody forgot Elias. 6 months after the program launched, Julian entered his first amateur boxing match, a youth exhibition at the Birchwood Recreation Centre. He was 9 years old, 35 pounds lighter than his opponent, and so nervous his hands were shaking in the locker room. Elias wrapped them. 2 loops around the wrist, 3 across the knuckles, pulled tight between each finger. "You scared?" Elias asked. Julian nodded. "Good." Elias said, "Scared means you care. Now plant your feet." Julian walked into the ring. Left foot forward. Right foot back. Hands up. He won in the second round a clean cross to the body that dropped his opponent to 1 knee. The crowd stood. Julian's grandmother screamed so loud the referee turned around. Julian looked across the ring at Elias. Elias nodded once. That was enough. Outside the recreation centre, Rosalind's roses were blooming early that year. Elias noticed them on the walk home. He stopped, touched one of the petals, smiled, Then he kept walking. If this story moved you, drop a comment and tell me who's the person in your life who kept showing up for you, even when nobody else did. Share this with someone who needs to hear it today. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe so you don't miss the next one.